listening to the Blue Raider Podcast, presented by Gold's Gym of Tennessee. Your all-access pass to everything Middle Tennessee sports, game recaps, player spotlights, and the latest from the heart of Blue Raider Nation. Now, here's your host, Jay Golden.
Welcome back into the Blue Raider Podcast. Today's episode, we are going to be recapping last week's FIU loss and, of course, looking ahead to the 100 Miles of Hate matchup this Saturday in Bowling Green. And hoops is finally in action, so we're going to be talking all things with MTSU Sidelines lead sports reporter Willie Phaler. You're not going to want to miss today's episode, but before we do that, let's thank today's sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Gold's Gym of Tennessee, and the new year is coming, and so are your resolutions. So Gold's Gym of Tennessee is here to help you hit the ground running with brand new month-to-month pricing starting November 1st. And the best part, there's no fees, ever. So pick the plan that fits your crew. You can go gold for one member at $25 bi-weekly, or you and your partner can upgrade to the VIP, which is $35 billed bi-weekly, or you and your family, good enough for 3 members, is just $45 bi-weekly. And here's another perk. All the memberships include access to all 16 Gold's Gym locations. So whether you're lifting, spinning, or training for a brand new you, they've got you covered with all of their locations across the state of Tennessee. So don't wait for January 1st to start your resolution today. Join online or stop by your local Gold's Gym of Tennessee and kick off the new year with no fees and full access to fitness. Gold's Gym of Tennessee. Stronger starts now. Joining us now on the Blue Raider Podcast, it is the MTSU Sidelines lead sports reporter, Willie Phaler. Willie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jake. Excited to be with you here today.
Yeah, man, I'm more excited to talk about hoops versus football. So I said before we got on, let's get the positive out of the way first. Both basketball programs this week have winning records, undefeated. As a matter of fact, the Lady Raiders kind of had a weird week where they started off with a rough opener at Education Day against Tennessee State, but they held victorious. And then on the road at St. Louis, they kind of figured some things out with an 18-point victory there. Let's go ahead and hop into these Lady Raiders. I mean, what a week for them. I think collectively, like I said, they learned a lot about themselves in those first 2 matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't be upset with 2-0 ever, especially with what that non-con schedule looks like for them right now. I mean, Tennessee State and St. Louis, that's not like 2 lowly teams or anything, but the result of the Tennessee State game, I mean, seeing them that close, it was kind of jarring, but you got to remember where they are right now. I mean, 3 freshmen starting, brand new starting 5 for Rick this year. And so, I mean, there's going to be growing pains at times, especially with like the matchups that they have. Like Tennessee is going to be a fun one, and like Auburn coming to town. But seeing freshmen being able to go out there and compete, like Blair Bogus dropping 2 double-doubles and getting Conference USA, I don't even think it was freshman of the week. It might have been player of the week for women's basketball. So a lot of good signs for them early.
Yeah, Blair by far blew me away. I know the type of level and ability that she has, but like you said, coming out the gates with 2 double-doubles, I think a lot of us thought maybe Macy Pfeiffer would take the early spotlight, and Macy had herself a great week too. She almost had a double-double. I think it was 9 and 9 against St. Louis, so she had herself a much better game. Stayed out of foul trouble relative to what happened at Tennessee State, so seeing her on the floor. But what's even funnier about it is outside of Savannah Davis, Pfeiffer played the most minutes, and Bog is still at 34. So, but yeah, to your point, I'm very impressed with what these freshmen have done. And the way I love how this schedule is shaped up is tonight they're going to play Tennessee Tech. And then later this week, they're going on the road to Houston to play Rice. And then they finally come back next week to play Tennessee at home. So they progressively get better with this competition. And I preface that because tonight against Tennessee Tech on the road in Cookeville, don't bat an eye, because the Golden Eagles, although Rick has only lost to the Golden Eagles once in his career, I do believe, that's still an OVC champion, unanimous decision to win the OVC. They're probably going to return back to the NCAA tournament. So this is no shabby opponent that the Lady Raiders are playing tonight. And of course, later this week in Houston against Rice, a program that, kind of ran Conference USA before MTSU made their emergence about 5-6 years ago. And then they left ultimately for the American Athletic Conference. But on the other side, the men, 2 non-conference opponents. I know a lot of people might be rolling their eyes at being 2-0, but I think you're with me there, Willie, that the way that they went about winning those games was impressive, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, when you play, because, I mean, it was Milligan and then Webster, so NAIA and then a D3, like with those lower level opponents, it's not just a win. You need to beat them by 30 or 40, and they did even more than that. I mean, the Milligan win was around that 45-point margin, and then against Webster, they won by over 50. So, I mean, the offense clicked on all cylinders as it should against a lower tier opponent, but it didn't look like they were kind of stumbling through those lesser teams. They did what they needed to show that they should do.
This is my yearly reminder that Kermit Davis lost to Martin Methodist, now UT Southern, but lost to Martin Methodist the year prior to beat Michigan State. There, I got it in for this year. That's my quota. But I say that because these games, although at the end of it all don't mean anything, and people that may be against the coach might say, well, these are just games that you put on the schedule to help his win percentage. But I like to point out the fact that if you listen to our preview episode, that these games are hard to schedule with other mid-majors because everyone's fighting for that net and RPI ranking position. So, and if you look at our other conference foes, they also have 2 to 3 non-Division I games. So it's the game that we live today, and they're just playing that game. But to go back to kind of how we highlighted the women, who was your biggest surprise in these first 2 matchups on the men's side?
Kamari Lands has really stood out, but I think we all knew he would. I mean, 6'8", 230, moves like a guard, thinks he's a guard most of the time. So he's really been the engine of that offense at times. But Sean Smith and Javin Carter at point guard feel like they could be a really good 1-2 duo to lead the Blue Raider offense this year. You weren't really sure what they would look like as Blue Raiders coming into it. I mean, 2 unknown commodities, Javin coming down from Penn State and then Sean transferring up from Western Illinois, I believe. And so really their first time at either of these levels, or at least for Ja, the first time he's seen this consistent amount of playing time. But both of them passed the eye test as guys that can run the offense when they need to, and then Sean stepping up big as a defender as well.
I think collectively, those are great options. Collectively, I think my biggest surprise was coming out that first exhibition, that first game, Trey Green starting at the 2. My whole preseason expectation was that either Sean or Carter were going to start at the 1, and then Smith obviously gets that nod. And then who are they going to start at the 2 alongside of him? Was it going to be James Dent, the Northern Iowa transfer, or the Northern Illinois transfer, Alec Oglesby, the guy that was hurt last year who played the 2 guard at Stetson? We could even see some combination of Carter maybe even starting at the 2, but none of that happened. Trey Green, I guess the long-lost wolf in all of this, considering all these transfers that come in, and we saw the best version of Trey Green on Saturday against Webster, where he hit 4 consecutive 3-pointers, 3 in 3 straight possessions, just a heat check for that guy. But that's who Trey Green always was in high school. That's the guy we really missed his freshman year, and now he's really comfortable in that position. We all know how good of an on-ball defender he is, but super, super happy with his development as a player, because it does seem like he is getting better on a yearly basis, and that's always great to see, and obviously got himself a starting nod. And then the other side of things is that 4 or 5 position. A lot of people worried about Chris Loof, and I still think Chris Loof is kind of finding his new style now that he's going to have to play 15, 20 minutes a night, potentially more. I know they like Jared Hall. Jared saw 15 minutes on Saturday, so I know McDevitt has said they will play small with Jared Hall at the 5, but seeing Loof get in there, get some good minutes. I think 14.6 rebounds against D3. I think that's what you kind of anticipate in 16 minutes of play. So I'm happy altogether. I think they look great defensively. They look like they're creating a lot of problems. And Webster they're no joke. I mean, they are a D3 tournament team from last year, and they were a unanimous pick to win their conference again this year. So I think putting it together against a well-coached team, because at time Webster did run a pretty good offense, and I think defensively in the half court they looked pretty good. So I hate to move on from the good this week, but let's get on to the bad, Willie, shall we? FIU 56-30 loss at home the first time. The Panthers, and even back then they were the Golden Panthers. That's how long it's been. They defeated MTSU at Floyd Stadium 56-30. Willie, I mean, we talked about it post-game show with Brett Walker, your cohort at MTSU Sidelines. Man, it's just hard to really pull too much positive from a game like that.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to summarize that game would be just the feeling of sitting in that presser or even watching it. It was kind of just like, what is there to even ask about it? I mean, they just got straight outclassed, and at this point in the season where they're sitting, with 1 win and we're well into November right now, it's, what is there to ask Derek that he hasn't already told us? It feels like a broken record at this point.
Would you rather have a 26-point loss like that, like we witnessed on Saturday, versus what we saw a week and a half ago, I guess when this comes out 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville State, and you blow it in the fourth quarter again? At this rate, I don't know which is worse, but I do feel like I can stomach a 26-point loss better than I can another fourth quarter blown lead.
I mean, the 26-point loss, and really that feels generous just because of the touchdown that Roman and Cam Lacey hooked up for in the fourth quarter in garbage time. This really should have been a 30-point loss, and it might be kind of a punch in the face that this team needs at this point in the season, especially going into Western upcoming in the next game. But at least with the blowing the fourth quarter and all that streak of one possession games in conference play, like it felt so much better than last year, where it was just at times it felt like they were completely lost, and at least now they were being competitive. And all of a sudden that a switch got flipped.
For the second straight week, they faced another top Conference USA rusher in Keyshawn Owens and held him to 68 yards. So, like, I hate to be the guy that's pointing out good things in this situation, because obviously no one's happy about it. And I know Mason's not happy. And I know clearly the fans that are listening are not happy at all with the results on the field. But the defensive line continues to be one of the best in Conference USA. The scoreboard, when you look at the scoring average, is going to screw that defensive front for what the effort that they put in, because the offense, if you count turnover on downs, had 6 turnovers on Saturday. And you look at that drive chart for the Panthers, and it's like 30 yards, 30 yards, 30 yards in 3 plays. And when you have to ship the defense right back out there immediately after you fumble inside your own 20, it makes life hard for those guys. But again, holding Conference USA's second leading rusher to under 70 yards, that's not nothing. But where I get really frustrated is FIU came in with their backup quarterback. I know that Mason said that he wasn't prepared for that. But if I'm FIU, and Simmons has said this, I know in interviews throughout the year, that Pisanski is the better passer. If I'm FIU, and if I've looked at anything at MTSU tape, throwing the football is going to give me the best chance to win. If Jenkins is even on any bit of injury concern, and I know that my backup is the better passer, I have to think at some point you'd prepare to see Pisanski. And that was surprising to hear Derek Mason say that. But I'm going to say that to parlay that into this next game. You're going to Western, one of the best offenses in Conference USA, but more importantly, one of the better quarterbacks in Maverick McIver you're going to face all season long. And I can only imagine what Helton's doing right now is licking his chops, because this secondary, just 257 yards to a backup quarterback, 4 touchdowns. I'd have to assume that's Pisanski's. Those are both career highs for him. I fear what could potentially happen on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's almost the same situation as it was this week, where McIver hasn't played in almost a month for Western Kentucky. They had the backup who's a little bit more mobile playing for them. And talking to the student paper at Western Kentucky, the College Heights Herald, all inclinations from them are that McIver is not going to start this week. But I mean, if they
great news,
if the Western coaching staff and Helton looks at what Pisanski was able to do, and I know it was his first start this year, probably his first collegiate start, 5 touchdowns, Conference USA Player of the Week, why not throw McIver back out there for one more? I mean, especially in the 100 Miles of Hate, like the rivalry game for both teams. I mean, a win is a win, but you need, like, Western's not going to act like they don't want to blow MTSU's doors off.
Well, I watched that Louisiana Tech overtime game 2 weeks ago for Western when Tisdale got his first start, and I thought to myself, this team, they're a different team with Tisdale versus McIver, but he looked to have figured some things out against New Mexico State, who does have one of the better one of the better defenses in Conference USA. So I don't want to necessarily overshadow that. New Mexico State has similar issues to MTSU, where they don't have a good secondary, but it's not like Tisdale's going to get pushed any further this Saturday versus what he faced against New Mexico State. So I think I'm with you. I mean, he's had over a month now to rest up. I believe he was taken out in that Louisiana Tech game, or excuse me, in the FIU game, and then Louisiana Tech it kind of rolled over. So he's sitting close to 3-4 weeks of rest. So that's an interesting development there. But to say the least, I'm very wary about what could happen on Saturday. But I did get asked this question on our Conference USA podcast roundtable, and I do think it is a good question. If Mason were to win this Saturday, is that a season-altering or rather career-altering win for him?
Career, maybe not, but I think for the season it is. I think anyone at this point with the way things are trending that it's season-altering, because I think for most people from the outside looking in, especially if you're not on a hardline MTSU beat, it's like, okay, they're going to go 1-11. Like that's how it's going to go. They barely beat Nevada, and Nevada's one of the worst teams in FBS. I mean, we saw them play Western close, but they've had a couple blip ups. I mean, we saw FIU go on the road and beat them 25-6, and that was really not one I don't think anybody expected, let alone the guys on ESPN that weren't too tuned into Conference USA. And so career altering, maybe not for a guy who, spent time at Vandy, has those SEC ties and being in the NFL and all that. But I think it changes the recruiting outlook, because I was talking with Connor Smith and Shane Pickering the other day, and like they've only got like 3 or 4 commits for this next class. And I mean, if I'm a high school kid and I've got MTSU or literally anybody else on my list at the moment, I'm probably going to have a nice, long, hard think about it.
Right. Well, and on the topic of the 100 miles of hate, a lot of these guys too that in this previous recruiting class chose MTSU over Western Kentucky. I mean, we're clearly in a battle for recruits in this area. And no, I don't keep up with Kentucky high school football, but I know football in the mid-state, and as close as Nashville is to Bowling Green, that is in their recruiting ground. So this game has more implications than what you see on the 100 miles of hate side of things. But yeah, that is, we talked with Connor about that at the recruiting side of things, and I would have to imagine at this rate it's JUCO from here on out, or really banking on the transfer portal, which is scary to say the least about the future of this team, because when you have 1-10 or 1-11, potentially 2-10 at best seasons, that doesn't do well in the transfer portal. The guys don't. If you're trying to go for a winning culture and you're on the fence about money, you tend to side with the winning culture. So to this game, though, it is a 2:30 kickoff in Bowling Green that is viewable on ESPN Plus. The Hilltoppers are 13.5-point favorites for this one. We're going to really dive more deeply into our predictions for that game. But before we do that, I have to thank our sponsor for this segment, and it's Trevor Haggard of State Farm. Because when life happens, you want someone in your corner who actually knows your name. And that's where Trevor Haggard State Farm comes in, whether it's protecting your car, your home, or your family's future. Trevor and his team are right here in Murfreesboro ready to help. So don't just settle for some 1-800 number. Call a neighbor who cares. Call Trevor Haggard State Farm today at 615-203-5522 or visit their website at trevorismyagent.com and let them help you protect what matters most. Trevor Haggard State Farm, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And Willie, with that, our Trevor Haggard keys to the game this week. Tell me, what are 2 keys for the Blue Raiders if they want to come out victorious in Bowling Green?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing for me is limit penalties. It's really been an issue for them all year, and arguably cost them a few games down the stretch. Particularly, the one that jumps out to me is the game on the road against Delaware, and there were the personal fouls from out of the secondary down the stretch. But when you kind of break it down and look at MTSU game by game, they've been the team with more penalties in 8 of 9. With the only one being that Austin P game, where I don't think it mattered what P did that day. They were the team that wanted to win that day a little bit more. And I think the staff would agree with you. So I think they've got to lay back on the penalties and kind of get out of their own way. And the next thing is to play a full 4 quarters, play 60 minutes. That's kind of been one of the major talking points that Derek has made, especially right after games this year, is, there's slip-ups for him. Maybe the offense doesn't come out straight in the first quarter, or the defense just looks abysmal. And, I mean, the example that jumped out from this week was that stretch in the second quarter. You brought it up a little bit earlier. There were 3 straight drives that started in plus territory for FIU, 5-play touchdown drives. And if they can't get out of their own way, like if you're just handing the opposing team the ball in that territory, whether it be turnovers, whether it be special teams play, or whether it just, that's the way it shakes out, they've got to be able to limit that, at least get themselves on an even playing field.
I'll jump ahead to my second one for those that are already listening to bounce off of what Willie just said. Mason said this week in games past, we talk about all these 1 point or 1 possession losses we've had in Conference USA. And then you have this one this week. He said in the postgame presser, it was the focus. He said that his team lacked the focus in this game. And so for me, my second key is full focus. Have a full focus approach to this game, because in a game like this, you can't afford to have any errors. You're going to have to play a practically perfect, for what we've seen this year, a perfect football game. As you said, play 60 minutes. You have to have, you can't have an ability to slip up and say you have no focus. That is concerning to me in week 11 going into week 12 and saying you're having focus issues. That's hard. I don't like to hear that. And then my first one really is a recency bias thing. No turnovers. I mean, you had 3 costly turnovers, 3 turnover on downs. That's 6 possessions just handed over to the Panthers. Again, I'll get off that soapbox before I get on it, but you can't give free possessions, especially to a team as talented as WKU, because FIU is practically flawless in those possessions. I think we might have held them to a field goal once or twice, but I don't think WKU is going to be that generous. The red zone offense there is fantastic. So let's move on. X factor, Willie, for you, who on Saturday is going to be the biggest X factor for the Blue Raiders if they do want to win on Saturday?
The one that jumps out to me is Najee Cox. He's kind of separated himself as the lead receiver for the Blue Raiders this year, although he's been a lot quieter lately. I think it's been a few weeks for a touchdown from him. But he's been the go-to guy in the red zone. I think if there's, whether it's a one-on-one fade ball at the goal line or Nick just needs somebody in that 20-yard area, they're going to turn to Najee. And this offense has already cemented itself as a group they don't want to run the ball. Bodie Reeder will come out and tell you 10 times out of 10 that he does not want to run the ball. I think if he could have the choice to make it 7-on-7 flag football where you only throw the ball, he would. I mean, he's so big on airing it out and wants to let Nick shine, and he's got to have a consistent receiver. And it's been a by committee who the number 1 is, but I think for them against a Western pass defense that's been really stout, they're 3rd in Conference USA in that area, that Najee is going to have to step up and kind of be that guy that we've seen him be at times this year. Like the P game, I know he played pretty well against Nevada as well, and he's scored against Delaware, was a big touchdown, brought them back into that one as well.
Yeah, on Najee, because when you mentioned it, I had to look into it myself. He hasn't eclipsed 100 yards this year, which I thought was wild. I thought surely he had done it at one point, but he hasn't done 100 yards once this year. He hasn't led MTSU in receiving in a game since Marshall, which was week 5. And then since Marshall, he's only had 1 touchdown, and that was in a game against Delaware. So a guy that started the season out with 4 touchdowns through the first 4 games has only had 1 touchdown since. And he actually hasn't even eclipsed. He had 77 against Kennesaw, but past that, the most he had was 37 against Delaware. But he hasn't even had more than 4 catches in a game since Marshall as well. So definitely concerning numbers. Like, not to say like I'm wholeheartedly, I always assume he's going to be a big part of the offense, but not even without looking at the numbers, I didn't realize he'd really fallen off a table since we've gotten into conference play. Maybe that's defenses figuring him out. Like you said, having to be forceful by committee. Cam Lacey's we've seen the emergence of him. Even Hunter Tipton's gotten a lot more touches as well. We know what Middlebrooks does out of the backfield, but yeah, I actually like your pick a lot, but Nick Vadiato is mine. Just because of the situation that surrounds this game. When you talk about this being his final year, it's going to be his final 100 miles of hate. We saw him last week against FIU arguably have one of his more efficient days that we've seen all year long. He just had a bad pick that really started to snowball the game. I'm not saying that pick is what lost them the game, but you've already had 2 bad fumbles, and then you've already had turnover on downs, and then you sail a wide open receiver, basically hit a free safety right in his hands and gave him free reign to run it down 25 yards. So again, Nick didn't lose that game, but he certainly didn't help you win that game either. And I like to say up to that pick, we saw him get better in that game, but we never really got to see the end of that game because they subbed him out for Roman the entire 4th quarter, something that I didn't think would ever happen. I know a lot of people really, really like Roman, or they like the potential of who Roman is. I think Roman has a lot of skill sets you like to see in your quarterback. but I'll get off of that. But with Nick, I'm concerned because if you're willing to bench him when the game was still, I'm not saying they had a chance to come back, but like you still like there was still a fighting chance. And even Mason said himself, I want to have a team that's out there on the field that will fight to the very end of the game. Well, subbing out your 6-year, 5th-year quarterback with a full quarter left against FIU doesn't really entail that. And so that concerns to me. Now, Nick, I think, is a mentally strong kid. I think he's going to be able to buckle it up and play his heart out on Saturday for his final 100 miles of hate. But I want to see him react to that situation. Obviously, he's disappointed in himself. I mean, I think it's only 10 incompletions on Saturday. It's still a good over 20 completions, only 10 incompletions. I think the kid is fine. But how do you react to that? And how do you react to that in big games like this? Because at this rate, if you want to consider this season successful in the terms of winning more games than last year, you have to win out. And that starts on Saturday. So for that reason, Nick Vadiato is my favorite. But Willie, before I got into my ad read, and again, thanks to Trevor Haggard of State Farm for sponsoring that segment of our episode, I prefaced the spread for Saturday, 2:30 kickoff in Bowling Green. It is currently at 13.5 favorites for WKU, just short of 2 touchdowns, over under at 55. I will say that I'm a little surprised at the over under being. I thought it was low. MTSU did just put up their most points all year long. WKU, known for their scoring, I thought 55 was a little bit low. But I want to hear if you have scoring predictions for this game. How do you think this game unfolds?
Yeah, I mean, what I've been rolling with, I came up with it last night. I think Western will win 38-27. I think it's going to be one of those where the Blue Raiders, they're able to hang on for most of the fourth quarter, and then there might be a turnover, whether it be a bad throw from Nick, like an overthrow similar to what we saw at FIU, or we've seen fumble issues at times. I mean, everyone wants this. I think everybody at MTSU wants to see DJ Taylor shine. I mean, the story's great. Riverdale kid, very successful there, and he's had a really good start this year. And so it might have been just a bad game, but I think the turnover bug's going to bite them late, and they'll end up falling by 9.
I like where your head's at. I had it at 42-28, just an extra touchdown essentially to the Hilltoppers. I just think that I think the gameplay is similar to what you said. For one half of football, they'll play really good. My fear is which half of football is that, because this really starts to snowball if they come out and lay a dud through the first 2 quarters in Bowling Green. However, if they make this a fight and you give WKU the effort that we've seen in this season, again, excluding the Delaware game, the Kennesaw game, but where you come out and punch them in the mouth early like you did with Jack State, and heck, even FIU for that matter, but take that fight into the fourth quarter, give yourself a chance, because anything happened in these rivalry games. But I like WKU to cover and as well the over to hit on this game. So. And I think quarterback for WKU may change that prediction a little bit. Like if Tisdale is for sure a go, I might even side more on your side with 38 or 35 points for WKU. But I don't like MTSU's odds and even covering the spread as it sits right now. But weather inclusive. I know that they had to fight today with 30-degree weather in their first practice, when last week it was 70. So that might even add a little adversity for them. But for all intents and purposes, WKU's practicing in the same weather conditions. They're just 100 miles up the road. I don't know if you knew that, but they're dealing with the same thing. So, Willie, man, I appreciate you coming on and joining us today. One thing too, I'm certain we're going to have you on again. You're on the basketball beat for MTSU Sidelines. You've been at football all year long. Tell me a little bit before this Saturday kickoff, where can we find any stuff that you are putting out or your guys over at MTSU Sidelines?
Yeah, so MTSU Sidelines socials, mainly Twitter and Instagram, are at MTSU Sidelines. And then also my personal Twitter, it's at Willie_Phaler 50. And, it's all football and basketball right now. And then even once we get into the spring, it'll be a little bit more baseball on top of that men's basketball stuff. So just want to thank you for having me on, Jake.
Absolutely. I appreciate Willie once again. And thanks to you, the listener, for tuning in to today's episode. If you're not already following us on social media at Blue Raider Pod, that's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and X at Blue Raider Pod, and on YouTube. So if you're listening to us today on our live stream, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another one of our episodes. Again, on Friday, we will have another Behind Enemy Line segment. where we will be joined by our friends over at Topper Talk, or I guess I should say enemies for this week over at Topper Talk. Steven will be joining us to talk everything about the Hilltoppers and their side of the 100 Miles of Hate, and then look forward to more basketball content as the season progresses. But until next time, go Blue.